So, the Stonemaier controversy. If you missed that video, I'll link above. But what we're talking about today is a follow-up on that, because thought it was very interesting, very apropos. Right after Reddit picked that up, and it was talking about the 5 controversies that Jamie Stonemaier eloquently put his thoughts on his blog, 5 recent events that had happened around in our community, online, in person, everything else in between. Some, lying to get games, some trying to bribe people to get their games reviewed, some people being jerks in the comment section. And he sent this list of questions, anonymous survey questions, out to people on the media list for Stonemaier games. And I wanted to talk about this because I thought it was very illuminating and very interesting. Because, one, I wanted to share with you some of my answers from this, but I also wanted to let you know I would really be interested to see what the results of this are actually going to show. Because as you'll see in a second here, these questions are not necessarily as clear as you may want them to be. There's a little bit of fudging that you could do depending on how you want to interpret or answer the questions. And then the other flip side of things that I always have to ask when I see something like this is, because it's anonymous, are people going to be more honest? Or because some of this stuff is probably a little bit uncomfortable for people to answer at the same time? And that's going to be very interesting, because you can see that even some of these questions have answers that don't really fit exactly where people may be at, or the nuance of some of it as well. And I know you have to limit some of the questioning here and the answers to be applicable and to not have it be too much as well, so you can stratify it. But the other thing that I guess I would say with this is, from that aspect of things, as someone who has a heavy science background, right, you can make data look like what you want it to depending on how you frame it. You've seen those bar graphs where all of a sudden there's this huge discrepancy in the bar graph, one of those. But then you have to look at the scaling on the sides, and all of a sudden the scaling isn't like this is 100 and this is 0, right? It's like this is 99 and this is like 97. And you're like, look at this difference. You need to be aware of how you frame things in this situation. That said, preamble over. Let's pull up the questions and let me show you what we're talking about. So here you go. 9 questions, completely anonymous. He says, clarification at the top. When I refer to review, content where you express your opinion of a tabletop product. If you don't review games, only answer 5 and 6. Okay, great, fantastic. No problem there whatsoever. So, first question. Of the games you review, roughly how many of them are provided for free by the publisher? None, some, half, most, all. It's a very interesting question, right? I believe I guessed at this point in my channel, I'm more up to half. Now, let me be clear on that, because again, right, this is data. One, it's probably not 50%. It's probably, well, you know what? Let's go with 50%. Let's go with that for the time being. But where I'm putting the nuance with this question, right, is that how many games do I review on this channel? Like, I'm inundated with reviews. The games I'm reviewing are, 50% that way because I just have a ton of things sent. And so I have less time and space for the things that aren't sent to me to review, because I'm just playing those necessarily for fun as well. And they maybe aren't as hot or on the hotness. So it's a weird blend on my side of things to, make that a concrete question, because I can see that one right off the get-go being interpreted drastically different. But I'd also wager, and I'd also wonder, right? Like, I think of myself as a 2nd or 3rd tier channel. I do. Truth be told, I'm probably higher than a fair number of other people, though, in terms of getting some reviews if I ask as well. So I'm aware of my own bias. I'm aware of my own, whatever. And I would wonder, for channels that are bigger than me, say 2, 3, 5 times bigger, how much is actually provided for free? I'm wondering how many channels are at that most or all, because I think there's probably some. I don't know, though. I don't have a clue, because all I know is me, right? So next question. Question number 2. When you post content about tabletop products received for free from the publisher, do you openly disclose that information? Well, we just had a whole video of me saying pros and cons of disclosure. But yes, 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 yes. But the whole reason that this question, again, is being asked is that people don't. People don't. People don't. And the problem with it is, right, it's like boss at work sits us down and says, hey guys, we've been running into this problem. This has been happening, right? This is something we need to fix. And the truth is, we've had this conversation 3 times over the last year, and it's always in generalities, and it's always, we have this problem. We need to change this. We need to solve this, right? Truth is, it's usually 1 or 2 people that are doing that problem, and they either don't care or they aren't aware that they're actually doing the problem in their own ignorance, right? And again, not that necessarily they're doing it out of, malice or, purposeful, but it's just that sometimes it's just ignorance, right? Like I've been ignorant about problems on stuff, and then until somebody says something about it to me, I go, oh, geez, I was doing that. Well, let me take care of it because I didn't even realize it. But unless you specifically point sometimes at that person and say, you are the one having this problem, people don't always realize it. And so how, self-reflective of this are the people going to be? And in the same result, are you going to have people actually be honest? Because again, even though it's anonymous, I'm guessing that that's going to be an uncomfortable point for a lot of people. Part of this survey, I guess, where I'm getting with this question already is, if I don't think people are going to be 100% honest with this, is this actually going to have any significant value? Because again, like I already said, disclosures, if you're not aware of how biased you can potentially be, even if you're disclosing things, because that's what, people assume. That's what I said in the other video, right? Where you think you're disclosing and then you think that's going to eliminate bias. It's not. I don't know if this question is actually going to be, any significant, meaningful result, regardless of what it is, unless it's overwhelmingly people clicking no, right? Third question, how many times has a publisher offered you money in exchange for a review? Never. Never had anybody offer me money. If anybody wants to offer me money, I will sell out. I will sell out, you can hit me up in the comment section down below. Give me, like $2,000 a review right there, $2,000 a review. Hit me up, right? I don't care who you are. Just, I'm being facetious, but right. Like I even said in my other video, do you know how much money it would take to influence you? Do you know how much money it would take you to be slightly different? Is it $5? If somebody at work says, be nice to me, this is the example I used in the other video, and they'll pay you $5, would that be enough? If someone pays you $100 for an hour of being nice to them and not being mean to them, is that going to influence you? You get what I'm saying, though. It's not a perfect apples to apples comparison, but at what point would you not be able to separate those things out? And again, like I said with the disclosure situation, it's not that you aren't necessarily aware of it. You're not aware of how much it may be. And if you're denying that it ever would be an issue, well, again, that's implicit bias as well. You can be aware of it and still deal with it. But to say that it just doesn't happen to you is probably not the case. Anyway, soapbox over. Next question, right? See question number 2. I would be shocked. And what I mean by that is I've never asked money for a review, period. I would imagine that people have, right? Those are the Reddit insinuations, social media insinuations all the time that so-and-so, I know somebody that does that. I've been doing this for, like a couple years already on YouTube. I have yet, apart from this other blog reference, right? I have yet to see anybody that charges for reviews. Charges for previews with opinions? Yes. Charges for previews with lots of opinions or no opinions? Yes. We'll get to that question in a second. But pure reviews, until that one came out with the European guy doing that, of, knocking it up the list a little bit, never seen it before. I've never seen it named. Because if someone has names, name and shame. I don't care, right? Just name it. Who cares? Name it. But I don't also want people, nefariously Machiavellian-like lurking and saying, I know somebody who's doing that. These insinuations are just as stupid because ultimately most of them are completely and utterly baseless as well. And all it does is rile up pitchforks for no reason. And it makes everybody look stupid. And I hate that. If you have ever accepted money for non-review content for a product, here we go, right? Preview, playthrough, how to play, unboxing, live play. Do you also express your opinion? Whew. Right? Soapbox. You've heard me shout this from the rooftops. If you are doing a preview, no opinion. But that's what crowdfunding is full of now. Previews with quotes. Previews with this is fun. previews with, this is a completely different game than you've ever played before and you need to be interested. Pick major campaigns from the last 6 months and you throw a dart at the dartboard and I guarantee you're going to find them. And the answer's here. Yes, I express my opinion as a separate review with a disclaimer. We've already talked about disclaimers and disclosures. Yes, I express my opinion in a brief at the end of the paid content. Okay, you already heard my answer on that one, right? No, I do not express my opinion for the products for which I received payment. That is a correct answer. The also other correct answer, which I clicked, NA, I do not accept money for any content. I would love to. I have never done it. Never done it. Actually, you know what? Actually, I take that back. I got an ad promo from GameFound, like $20 or something a couple years ago. So, haven't really been offered anything since. So if anyone wants to sponsor me, publishers hit me up. I'm going to have the coffee out soon. We'll do some more Patreon. Anyway, I digress. But that was an ad, me basically prompting a game, but it wasn't me actually doing anything else. Apparently it wasn't good enough. I haven't done any more. Next question. When you post content about the product, do you preface the content with a mention of overt biases? For example, if your friends with publisher or designer received money from the publisher in the past. Oh my gosh. You know, the comment on the other video that there is no journalism or journalism isn't part of this is completely true, right? Because, you know, just from a moralistic standpoint, have any ethics of conducting business, this shouldn't even be a question. Because the answer, without even having to finish the question, is yes. Yes. Yes, I am upfront with it. Yes, I might not even do it. Yes, if I have any financial ties with it in the first place, I should not be doing this. Because invariably, there are industries, massive industries, small industries, regulations across the board in lots of other, almost every business that says if you have something along these lines, you just don't do it. But we're just going to have disclosures. It's okay. We've already heard my thoughts on disclosures, right? So if I have an overt bias, I will not review. Yes, I disclose the overt bias. I don't mention biases. I don't let my biases affect products which I review. Now, I have a problem with this because you should have separated those last two out. I don't mention them, separate from, I don't let it affect me because, well, they should be separated. Also, they're both horrible. They're both absolutely mother effing horrible. Especially that second one. I don't let my biases affect which products I review. Of course you mother effing do on a question like this. I'm sorry. I'm a little irate. No, not personally attacking, but just saying, like, I don't let my biases affect what products I review. That just speaks to the fact that it's almost like you don't understand what biases are. Every single person has biases on every single aspect of their life. From what I eat, from how I interact with my kids, from the products I enjoy, from the things I talk, the way I talk, all of these things that have been affecting me developmentally, nature and nurture, for my whole effing decades of life are giving me biases. And so everything is going to have a bias when it comes to these situations. You are going to have biases on your theme. You're going to have biases on your mechanisms. You're going to have biases on what you think is a good mechanism versus a bad mechanism, or incorporations of a good mechanism and bad mechanism. Because frankly speaking, there are plenty of games that people vehemently disagree about how good they are because they like the way the mechanism does it versus the way someone else does not like the same mechanism, which makes it not objective, because objective is without bias. It makes it subjective. Next question, though. How often do you accept, for review, tabletop games in genres, themes, and mechanisms which you don't typically enjoy? You know what? You've heard me express my opinion on this. I go out of my way to go out of my comfort zone because I'm looking for things that will change my mind. Not just collecting things for my collection, right? That's why I do things like Unconscious Mind, Luthier. That's why I did Dinos Riding Frickin' Dodos, right? I wasn't like, I think I'll like Dinos Riding Dodos. I was skeptical as all hell, right? I mean, yeah, so my answer was sometimes there. Again, like the wording on some of this. I'm a semantics person, right? Like wording really freaking matters, in case you missed that part of my personality. My mother was an English teacher. And so, my papers were just like skewered when I was growing up, like for revisions and like wording, and you need to do this better. So, but I think it's good to push your boundaries, but I also think it's good not just to go in there and say, I'm not going to like this and I'm going to review it, right? Because I think there has to be some element of it regardless that is of significant interest to you, because otherwise you probably, truthfully, should not be reviewing it in the first place in that sense. If you accept a tabletop product for review and you don't like playing it, what do you usually do? Independently of the designer publisher, I publish it and express my full opinion about it. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. I first contact the designer publisher to see if they have any notes, insights, or changes before I create my review. Okay, we'll have some thoughts on that. I offer to send the product to another reviewer instead of reviewing it, or I simply don't review it. So this is where it gets tricky, right? Because I've had this conversation, or I've seen this conversation in the back alleys. Of, if you get sent a game, are you obligated to review it, right? Like, and the big crux of that oftentimes is, did you ask for the game? If you didn't ask for the game, then the answer is no. Like, I'm not obligated. If you get my address from somebody, or you ask to send me a game and I just kind of go, and you send it to me, like, I'm not going to feel obligated to do it. But if I ask for it, I feel obligated. Now, I'm bad. Like, I'm a hypocrite here. Like, I have trouble keeping up with this. I'm well behind. There's stuff that I have not done yet, and there's stuff that I have been meaning to do and that I'm just bad about, right? Like, I don't confess to be good about this. I'm horrible, and I owe a lot of publishers apologies, and they're very graceful at times. At the same time, let's go back to these first three. Do you review the product and express my full opinion about it, right? Yes! Because unless you have a rules clarification, I don't really want them looking over my shoulder trying to say, hey, you know what, you're wrong on this. Because again, it's a subjective opinion. Like, if I'm getting rules wrong, nobody does that here, this idiot, then it's an issue. Then you just take your video down and redo it because you're an idiot. Case in point. But I don't want to opinion check it from companies first. I don't think that's healthy either, because we were just talking about the fact that there is no independent journalism or anything along those lines. Giving publishers first look to try and veto you putting out a product that may not be positive is the fear in this situation, which is why this answer is kind of the way it theoretically should be done. Which means the second one, is kind of, again, borderline. If they have any notes or insights or changes. Okay, yeah, changes, yes, absolutely. If you just screw up the rules like you're with me. But if they have any insights or notes, I mean, that's a whole nother issue, right? Like, because, again, it's that borderline, why are you sending it to them? So what's the purpose of that? I guess I would argue that if you change this word from review to preview, I guarantee a fair amount of that stuff probably does go into that, where they're saying, yeah, we do send this to the publisher first. For review, probably not. For preview, absolutely, because they're also getting paid, and they're paying. So they want to make sure it's 100% correct. So I understand that. So that one's kind of, yeah. I offer to send the product to another reviewer instead of reviewing it. I don't know, right? Like, if I get a game and I don't like it, I also have had people not want it sent on. And it's just kind of a weird dynamic then. Well, I don't really want to review it. I'm not really sure I like it. And also, like, it's a weird dynamic, pressure power situation of me telling a publisher, I'm just not going to review it because I don't like it, right? And I guess maybe I should be willing to do that more, and I should open my third eye and say, you know what, that may happen more so than I care to admit. Not because, again, I don't like it, but I also fear that if I don't like it and I don't review it, even though I asked for it and I wanted to review it in the first place, I almost am cowing to pressure in a different way, because I should let you know, as the consumer, as the person who's potentially interested in buying this in the first place, why I don't like it, because that might be useful to prevent you from buying a game that's not right for you. Or it might be useful in saying that, you know what, Chris, you're an idiot. Or Chris, you know what, those criticisms that you had aren't issues for me whatsoever, and I'm completely okay with it. And it may help you in that way determine whether or not it's right for you. So I'm not sure I agree with that one either, in terms of just not reviewing it in some ways, and sometimes in some forms, as well as sending it on to someone else. Because if I say every game on my channel is wonderful, again, not throwing shade at anyone, not saying anyone else needs to do anything different. I say, personally speaking, introspection going on here. If I tell you that everything is wonderful, you're going to look at me and go, Chris, well, how wonderful, how different are they? You're not giving me an illumination of what your individual tastes are, except that you just like everything. And I go, well, I don't like everything. There are certain things that just jive with me more than jive with me less. And I want to be very clear about that. And if I can't do it on both sides, it's not going to be clear in my head. And so then I don't know if it's going to be as useful for you on the other side of the camera. Because if I was watching a video, I want to see significant pros and significant cons, even if I disagree with those cons in the first place from you. So that's just where my head goes when I try and do videos. Last question. How worried are you that saying negative things about products will lead to fewer publishers sending you products for review? The answer is somewhere between a little and very, to be frank with you. Partially because I'm an anxious person, partially because I think there should be an answer between there. And it's not insignificant. And if you're saying not at all worried, and I wish I could be you, at the same time, my head goes to either you just really don't give a flying fruitcake, and I know that there are people like that, and you see it on the other tech side of things, you see it on the video game side of things. If you're big enough, you're going to get sent stuff, period. And you may, again, like I said earlier, not even have to ask for it because they're hoping for exposure in some ways. Now, again, I'd argue that on the crowdfunding side of things, we're seeing that a little bit less because we're seeing less reviews or impressions or, actual opinions on some of those. And we're seeing more preview content or the rise of preview content comparatively ratio wise. And so I'd say that that's what is happening in some senses. Because then it's sort of the best of both worlds, right? You still get to talk about the game. You get the happiness and the hotness and the clicks. Your publisher doesn't have to worry about getting negged on with a negative opinion in the first place that may affect their business loan that they're getting on crowdfunding. And then you also don't have to worry about not, getting stuff in the future if you say negative things. And I have the feeling at the same point, the counter argument to this is, well, Chris, I'm not worried. If it happens, it happens, right? At the same time, right? This is true of any job, any experience. If you're not a little bit concerned about this, you're not me. So I guess that's just where my head's at. I'm not big enough to say to you, honestly, that I'm not concerned about it. But I also am not going to be one of those people that's just going to neg on it for the sake of negging on it, right? That's not helpful. Again, constructive criticism. What does constructive criticism look like? And I feel like, and this is why I'm not as worried, and I've gotten better at this, is because if I feel like it's constructive criticism and not a personal attack or, anything along those lines, if you are going to take that personally and then not send me stuff in the future because of that, that's not on me, right? I have a kid right now that has trouble accepting criticism. Not even like criticism, but just like, hey, buddy, try and do this better next time. And he just shuts down. Anything just immediately sends him over the edge. And it's like, buddy, you can't have that. That's not healthy to live that way if someone says just the slightest correction to you in the most mild tone. And if that's what's happening in a situation like this, well, then I say I'm probably better off not getting that game or those games in the future. I'm also not going to lie on this stuff when it comes to my feelings on it, right? I'm not going to say it in a mean or a rude or a disrespectful way, but you know what? We can agree to disagree. And that's okay too. Again, you guys always disagree with me in the comment section, so it's nothing new. But that's my thoughts on it. And that's just me trying to be transparent about the fact that that does happen on this side of things. And I think that's an influencer content creator thing in general, which is why you see a lot of it, elsewhere on other social media more that way in the first place, is because that's a huge overarching concern, whether people like to admit it or not, to various degrees. Some less, obviously, some bigger. And I think size has a lot to do with it. Although, again, what exact correlation? No clue. Those are my thoughts on the questions, the forums, my answers, and everything else in between. There you go. Peace out. What would you have answered on some of these?